You're listening to Voiceover Coffee Shop, episode number 25.
Welcome to the Voiceover Coffee Shop, where we share our morning with some of the finest names in voiceover. And now, here's your host, voice actor Andrew Morrison.
Hi there, my name is Andrew Morrison, and welcome to the Voiceover Coffee Shop, where we start our day with some of the finest names in voiceover. If you'd like to know more about me, feel free to visit my personal website at www.voicebard.com. In this episode, we have coffee with my dear friend, Bill Dewees. Bill is a 30-year veteran as a professional voice master who has built numerous tools from his YouTube channel to the Voiceover Blueprint, where he freely gives knowledge about any aspect of the industry your brain could conjure up. With clients ranging from Coca-Cola, United Airlines, and so many more, I wanted to get Bill's particular insight on his training programs and how he has developed his business over the years to work for him. In this episode, we talk about the Voiceover Blueprint 2.0, marketing without hard selling, creating a follow-up email, and the truth about freelance sites like Fiverr and Upwork. Good morning,
Hey,
Bill.
Andrew.
How are you?
I'm good. I was feeling pretty good about myself until you said 30 years. And I thought, wait a minute, how old am I? I'm great. It's really good to be with you. Thank you for the invitation.
Of course. Thank you for coming on. So how do you take your coffee, Bill?
Black.
Black.
And I'm a huge Dunkin' Donuts fan. Just their regular down the middle, regular blend. Love it. It's mild and smooth. And here's just a little a side note for you. For those of you who have access to a Meijer grocery store, they're out of Michigan. They're around the Midwest. I live in Ohio, and we have access to it. So they have a Michigan cherry coffee, which is to die for. And so we get it, we grind the beans, and it's just it makes the kitchen smell unbelievable, and it tastes wonderful. So there's your coffee tip for the day.
Fantastic. I'm gonna have to keep that in mind. Maybe I can order it online or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how did you get wrapped up in this whole voiceover world? I mean, I know you've been doing this for a while, but where did that origin story begin?
Well, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. You have to wait for the movie to come out to see the whole thing. But it started, as a young kid, I wanted to work behind a microphone, particularly in broadcasting. And that's what I did. I was in radio for, I won't even tell you how many years, because if I tell you how many years, then you start adding them all up, and then you'll think, wait a minute, this guy's like 94. So I was in radio for quite a while and worked at a lot of different stations, primarily in a programming capacity, but also did a lot of on-air work mornings in particular. And I left broadcasting in 2005. And actually, the last part of my career, I was working at a university where I was teaching broadcast communications and business, but also managing. They had an FM facility in the Chicago area, and I managed that station for 14 years. And then, so I left that in 2005, I believe, and went to work for a business consulting firm in the Chicago area out of Buffalo Grove, which is a suburb there. And from there, was recruited to be vice president of business development for a corporate learning services company, where we did primarily e-learning. Not just e-learning, but it was, it was a lot of traveling. I was always traveling, and we were creating high performance learning environments for major corporations. And that was interesting and fun. The company ended up going out of business. And as I was being downsized, that's where I made the jump to voiceover, because I thought, what can I do? I mean, I loved working behind a mic, and of course, radio, for those of you who've been in radio and TV, it's different than voiceover, but there's some similarities, obviously. So I thought, I'm just going to set up a studio in my home, and I'm going to start I know how to market. That's one thing I can do. And I just thought, I'm just going to start marketing, and let's see what happens. And before you know it, Andrew, I was working, and then I was making more money than I'd ever made in my life. And I couldn't believe I'd waited this long to do it. And I just kept working and working. And, here I am. 15 years full-time voiceover. Prior to that, had done, e-learning narration for the company I was working for. And then in broadcasting, recorded, probably over 10,000 commercials and produced those as well back then. So
now I know you have a degree in marketing, but you have two other degrees, correct? What are the other two in?
Well, my bachelor's is in is in just the broad communication. Then I have, MBA, business administration. And then I was actually working on my PhD in education with an emphasis on training and performance improvement when the company that I was working with, the corporate, educational company, was going out of business. And that's when I jumped ship to do this. And then I quit my PhD program and I just decided this is what I'm going to do. So, that's the story there.
So with you being educated in how to teach and your passion for teaching and learning yourself, is that where you kind of transitioned into coaching?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly helped. And I think beyond the experience and knowledge, it was something, I think we're just kind of born with certain things that we gravitate toward.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned early on that I loved working in a broadcast environment where my job was hiring and training and developing talent. And I did that for a lot of years. And come to find out, in all humility, I was pretty good at it. It's one of those things I thought, hey, I can do this, and I was pretty successful at that. And it wasn't until, down the line, quite a few years later that I even, formally approached teaching. It was always in a broadcast environment. But I loved, being at the university. I loved teaching undergrads. I loved teaching graduate students. I loved the whole experience. So I had no intention to coach when I got into voiceover. I thought all I wanted to do was build my voiceover business. And I had people, started asking me for help, and one thing led to another. And now, I have a coaching program that's bigger than I could have ever even possibly have imagined 10 or 15 years ago.
So with your coaching, you cover a broad range of different industries, but in your overall coaching program, what are kind of the fundamentals of what you teach?
Yeah, it's what I have. If I may just explain what it is, because it's a little different,
Absolutely,
I think, than anything else you've seen. I call it the Voiceover Blueprint, but the model for it, I wanted to create more as closely as I could a university environment. And of course, a lot of education now for adults is online, well, even undergrads. And so I wanted more than just exchanging information. I wanted to create, well, number one, a curriculum where students could access training, and the training, to answer your question, covers everything from certainly there's performance, there's marketing, there's audio technical stuff. I have guests. My son's an audio engineer, so he assists voiceover talent in helping set up the studios and dialing in their chain. My daughter is a very successful. She makes a really good.
I'm taking Mallory's class right now. Yeah.
Are you in her class right now? Yeah.
Yeah.
So she actually teaches, does sessions on that for my students. I've got other people who help me with, we offer a live coaching webinar almost every day of the month now to the members of the program, probably closer to 25 days out of the week, or out of the month rather. But so there's the streaming curriculum on demand. There's the live component where we interact. And then we have a private group, Facebook group, where there's a community of the students where I can also interact, but also as I work, I can stream into that group and they can watch. If I'm doing as long as it's not something that, I'm not allowed to stream. Obviously, there's a lot of things I can't, but whatever I can, they get to see me whether I'm just, working out a marketing plan, or whether I'm doing an audition, or maybe I'm talking with Mallory about billing clients. They get a chance to see and watch all of that. And then we can discuss it when we do the live, webinars and such. Hope that all makes sense. It's like a 3-component program.
Yeah. What are you not allowed to stream? Just like NDA sort of things, or like?
Yeah, exactly. Non-disclosure stuff. I do a lot of pharmaceutical work, not exclusively, but I do a lot of pharmaceutical work, and none of that can stream. And there's other companies also that I'm not allowed to stream for obvious reasons. They don't want competitors to hear their information. But my students get a chance to. It's one thing to tell somebody how to do something. It's another thing to say, "Why don't you join me in the studio and let's watch me work?" It's not even hypothetical. It's real. This is me working. And like yesterday, I was doing a session where I did 2 directed sessions. One was with a group of clients in the UK. It was 4 guys for a company, and it was direction by committee. And so my students got to see how that worked. And then I did a session later where we were working with, it was a little different. The dynamic was different. There was a studio engineer, and then there was a client, and it was actually a bridge from another studio. So the point being, every day is different. So they get to see all these different interactions and scenarios that you can never prepare for somebody with a one-on-one coaching session. So I think it's much more comprehensive.
So when you were building out the curriculum,
Yeah.
as you were kind of laying out the blueprint, was there anything that you learned along the way of building this that you didn't know prior?
Well, I mean, I'm always learning. I'm
Right,
always
right, right.
learning. And yeah. And, it's interesting. If you look at the curriculum is actually, it's everything it includes everything I've ever created over the past 15 years since doing this full time. So yeah, there's been, it's interesting because the marketing principles stay the same. That never changes.
Mm-hmm,
Marketing is marketing is marketing. However, the specific tactics do change
mm-hmm.
because the way the technology changes, the way we interact changes, the platforms evolve and change. So I'm always learning things, and I have students who become successful working on platforms and using strategies that I've never even used because they take the basics, the fundamentals, and then they use their own imagination, but they share that within the group. So it's there's a really cool synergy that happens.
So is the priority of your work coming from direct marketing or is it coming from auditioning?
Within my voiceover business, it used to be, there's been a shift. It used to be auditioning. I mean, I auditioned my butt off like everybody else, and then it got to a point where, of course, the goal is you don't want to always have to go out and hunt your food every day, so to speak.
Right, right,
I mean, you always have to do a certain amount of that.
right,
But when you first
right.
start, that's all you're doing. You're just hunting for your next meal. But then what you learn is that if you treat your clients right and have a plan of communicating with them and doing all the right things, you can cultivate a core group of ongoing clients. And over the years, that's what I've done, to the point where, I know when I wake up, my inbox is going to have a number of jobs ready for me for the day, and I don't have to worry about auditioning for every job that I get. So to answer your question, the biggest part of my work now is repeat work, but I do a lot of direct marketing. So I would say most of the new work is now coming through direct marketing. And I typically only audition if it's like a private audition through one of the pay-to-play platforms, or a client comes to me and says, I have a client, they're like free to read for this. So that it's not like me and 100 other people that the client doesn't know me from Adam.
Right.
Now it's always a warm lead, somebody who already likes me. So at least I have a shot. I may not get it, but I at least have a shot.
Right. So a question for you based on a course that I've recently discovered of yours, based on something I haven't seen broadcasted very often.
Mm-hmm.
How do you market, and I don't want you to spoil the course, but how do you market to TV imaging?
Yeah, and first of all, I need to say, with full disclosure, I am not a TV image voice myself. Now, that being said, I recorded promos this morning for New Mexico PBS. They're a regular client, and I've done some one-off, and I've done some work for Fox, and one-offs here and there. But that's not my thing. So what I do, part of my educational business model, is I bring in experts who work in areas that I don't, who understand things that I don't. And Aaron Bradley in Los Angeles is one of the premier TV affiliate voices in the country. And so I brought Aaron in under the umbrella, of my coaching umbrella, to do this course in TV affiliate work. And we had a really successful class. It's really exciting to, the students who participated, we produced their demo, their TV affiliate demo, provided them with a database of the names they needed to go market to. And now they're doing the work. And now we're starting to hear back from people who are now starting to get really positive feedback from TV affiliates. They're on the radar. A student I was talking to the other day is now one of the primary voices of the Black News Channel, that network. So that's exciting. So anyhow, so to answer your question, I'm not the TV affiliate expert, but we're getting ready to start another class, audiobooks. Now I've recorded 41 audiobooks over the course of my career, but I stopped doing that several years ago. And so, but I've got a friend, literally was a student of mine when I taught college, who's been recording audiobooks now he's recorded hundreds and hundreds. He's an audiophile award winner, nominated for, what are they called? I'm blanking. The audiobook, the audio awards.
Okay.
Clearly, I've never won one, or I wouldn't have forgotten that.
Right.
So, been nominated multiple times for that. He's going to be teaching that class very soon. Information coming out soon on that. So, part of the strategy is to find people. I'm not the best at everything. There's a few things I do really well, and I'll teach those, but I'll find other people who are experts in their respective areas and let them do that. And that's kind of how we're building out this voiceover university model that we're doing.
Okay, so what do you believe are the areas that you are more of an expert in?
Marketing, and marketing. That's my core.
Mm-hmm.
There are two. I mean, if you were from a job perspective, a vocational perspective, if you were to say, what are your core skills? Communication, specifically copywriting. I started my career as a commercial copywriter, and really almost everything that I did following that was built upon my ability to write, especially persuasive and commercial copy. And then after that would be marketing. Those are the two things that I feel most confident at. And, you have to be a good behind a microphone. And I'm good. I'm good enough to do what I do. But I wouldn't consider, well, you know how it is. There's always people who are better than you at that. And there are certainly, I've got friends who are far better at it than I am. That being said, there are niches in which I can be very, there's big demand for my service. So that's what I do. I work where people feel like I'm a good fit. But marketing and writing, those are my two things.
So once you find that good fit, how do you market to clients without coming across as hard sell? Like with getting to, hey, here's what I do, and like, let's build that relationship instead. Here, buy from me.
That's a good question, because I hate that. That's not my personality. And, I've had to do sales through my career in broadcasting and, even within the consulting firm and the corporate services firm, especially as, when I was working in business development. But with voiceover, I have never, ever, ever, and I've recorded many, many, many projects. I've never, ever asked somebody to hire me. My pitch line is always this. Are you currently accepting voiceover demos? That's my line. It's a question. It's not a request. It's simply a question. And if they say yes, which they usually do, well, my door is open. That's how I get my voice into the ear of that prospective client. That's the easy part. The hard part is the follow-up and having a marketing communication plan, because, people forget about you after 2 or 3 days. They've got a life to live and other priorities. So it's staying in touch with those folks and just saying, hi, still here, if I can ever be of service. But I've never felt like I needed to hard sell. And that's one of the things I love about voiceover. I market, but I don't sell myself. I never ask anybody to use me. I just ask them if they'll listen to my demo. That's easy. That's an easy ask.
So when you're following up, how are you? I mean, because sometimes it takes multiple follow-up messages. How do you do that without being repetitive? And how do you provide value to them with that follow-up?
Yeah, good questions. One thing that I learned when I worked in radio is that we tend to think that people pay attention to everything that we do or hear. Like, for instance, if you listen to music radio, how often do you hear a hit song played? How frequently? Well, I can answer that question. Depends on the format, but it could be from like 2 hours and 20 minutes. You may hear it like on a hit-oriented format station. If it's geared, the older the audience, the less that rotation starts to slow down, because it can become annoying. And the longer the listening the audience, it starts to slow down. But the point being, just because somebody heard it once doesn't mean they got what you said. Just because they heard it 5 times doesn't mean they got what you said. So never assume that everybody listens and catches everything that comes through their inbox or that you say on a telephone call. But there's marketing wisdom. It's a best practice. It's considered best practice to stay in touch with a prospective client at least 6 times per year. That's once every 2 months. If you don't want them to forget about you, that's on average about how often you need to do it to make sure you don't go off their radar. And Andrew, it's all about getting people when they need you, because just because I talked to somebody today, just because you talk to somebody today doesn't mean they need you today. They may love your stuff. They may not need you for a day, a week, a year, or 10 years. I literally got a message from somebody recently who I had emailed 10 years ago, and he was just now responding to it because he didn't need me prior to that. But you've got to make sure you stay on their radar by staying in touch at least 6 times a year. So anyhow, that's the way I approach that.
Gotcha. So you just kind of rephrase what your initial message was?
Well, it can be here's the easiest way to do it.
Okay.
work around holidays, obvious things going on. Hey, during this time of Thanksgiving, just want to say how grateful I am for the opportunity to serve my clients. And if I can ever be of service, please let me know. I mean, that's a softball right there. New year. Hey, it's a new year. I hope 2021 was great for you. I hope 2022 is even greater. If I can ever be of service to you, please don't hesitate to call. I mean, just little things like that. It doesn't have to be, as a matter of fact, one of the things I learned in business is that conciseness is highly valued. People are busy. They don't try to be cute or fancy. Just be direct. Just get right to the point. Give them 3 sentences, 4 sentences, and be done with it. And your chances of being read are much greater.
Awesome. So going back to, I knew that Mallory was in voiceover. I didn't know that your son was an audio engineer and a voiceover talent. Yeah. Is your whole family just incorporated in audio?
No. It might seem that way. I have 3 kids, 2 of which are work within this industry. Alex more so as an audio engineer. So he consults people. He does lots of editing for people. He does lots of podcast work, editing, as well as personal consultations. And he lives in Chicago. That's his main thing. And so it's fun because to have, my daughter and my son, my daughter kind of migrate. My son always he was a musician. And toured and played, and recorded and did all that stuff, and did great, and it was a lot of fun. Well, now he's a little bit older, and he's looking for something where he's not on the road all the time, and he has a girlfriend, and all of that. So it works out nicely for him that way. But with my daughter Mallory, it wasn't even on her radar. She worked for me for a number of years in a full-time capacity, just handling my office. And after a while, when you've done this for a while, as I'm sure, you learn, is that after a while, there's a lot of stuff to do. There's billing, there's receivables, I've got 6 people contacting me, asking me for stuff and projects, and how do you manage all that? And so she's helped me out with all that. So being around all of that, she started working for me maybe a dozen years ago. So she is fully immersed, and I try to encourage her to do this earlier on, but she's not entrepreneurial in that way. She's very administrative. She has a very strong set of admin skills. And then all of a sudden it got to the place where she was getting work and people were wanting to use her. And then she couldn't ignore it any longer. And she said, Dad, I can't work for you full-time anymore. So she works for me part-time, and she has a family and kids, but still on a part-time basis makes a very, very full-time living. With voiceover, primarily using Fiverr. Yes, Fiverr, and not doing $5 jobs. There's so much misinformation going around about that. It's so interesting. But anyhow, I won't get into that. I was actually
just about to ask you to specify.
Oh, well, let's get into it then.
So yeah, let's dig into that. So, I mean, a lot of people, I'm fully aware that there are a lot of opportunities on Fiverr, and it's a lot more than $5 jobs, but they're not quite agency or GVAA rates. And so I know there's a lot of discrepancies with
well, it depends. I mean, I just completed a $5,000 job not long ago it was an e-learning project that paid higher than what you were talking about, and other rates. It depends. I understand what you're saying, and here's the way you have to look at it, and here's the way I look at it. The voiceover industry is so different now than it was 20 or 30 years ago, because it used to be, if you wanted to work on voiceover, you really needed an agent to get access. I mean, they were the gatekeepers. But I remember teaching my MBA students this back in the 90s, is that technology has changed everything. You have to rethink, business people got it back then. You had to rethink business. It flattened the organizational hierarchy, the way you communicate, the way you work with clients, the competitiveness. Because it's easy to access stuff, information. It's cheaper to make products. I mean, what you pay for a computer now versus what you paid 10 years ago. I mean, it's crazy. Technology now allows you to call an Uber or a Lyft instead of a taxi. Now it's putting taxis out of business, and certainly the way we do voiceover now is making it hard for people who have done voiceover a certain way for the past 20, 30 years, but you adapt or you die. I mean, can you imagine if we kept riding horses and buggies into 2021 because we didn't want to hurt, or because we didn't want to hurt the horse and buggy business by buying an automobile. I mean, you got to ride the flow. Technology always wins. It always wins. So I'm always looking at what is technology doing now. These platforms. I remember when voices.com and Voice123 came along. It was about when I began my career, 2006, 2005, 2006. And a lot of people had a lot of bad things to say about them. And of course, it was a new thing. It was a new thing. All of a sudden, this platform springs up. But what these platforms do is give you access to a broad variety. So not only do the people with the big budgets, can they afford to do this, but the mom and pops, the smaller concerns, the people who don't have the big budgets. Now, they're not going to be able to afford big budget talent, and that's fine. But there are people who are just starting off who would love to do that job for a few bucks just to get the experience and to begin to build their resume. When you were 16 years old, what was your first job, may I ask?
I was a clerk of the magistrate court. I was an intern.
Oh, that's a nice first gig. I worked at the Dairy Queen, just to put this in perspective. But my point being, nobody starts their career in the corner penthouse suite office and sea level. You just don't. You start off, you bust tables, you work for the chief magistrate or.
I've worked in a lot of restaurants. Don't get me. That was a summer.
I'm very impressed.
Program. But no, I've worked in a lot of restaurants.
Or you work at McDonald's, that's just the way 16-year-olds get started. And when you first start in voiceover, to start and say, well, I'm going to get top rate for that is ridiculous. You don't even need to, because you can start. You don't have to wait 3 years until you can compete with everybody else to jump into that pool, because the pool is infinitely larger than it used to be thanks to these platforms. But you just have to decide where you fit into it, and the market will let you know, because if you're not worth X number of dollars, you won't get offered any jobs at that. But if you are, based on your talent and your ability to deliver the goods, then you will find those opportunities. My average job on Fiverr is slightly larger than my average job through agents or anybody else, just to put it in perspective. Now I'm what they call Fiverr Pro. And I was invited to do that, I don't know, a year and a half, whenever they first launched it. And so I can't accept jobs under a certain dollar amount. They won't allow me to. And it's kept me from growing my business as fast as Mallory. Mallory's not a Fiverr Pro, and she's been able to far exceed what I can do, but she does a lot more work to get there. So my point being a Fiverr Pro is not necessarily a blessing. It's really kept me from growing as fast as I would like to. But here's the thing, and stop me if I'm going on too long about this.
No, go ahead.
Fiverr, which is a real legitimate company. It's not a few voiceover talent who decided to get together to launch a platform. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But what I'm saying, these are real business people with real business talent on their board of directors, guided by some very bright minds who are publicly traded. They're worth a lot of money. I own a lot of their stock because I believe, in who they are and where they're going. They are building a platform that's not going to be the same a year from now than it is today. And it's not the same today as it was when they launched 5 years ago. It's evolving. And what they're doing now, and I'm beginning to see signs of this, is they are cultivating a better client base, voice seekers. So what you're seeing, what I'm seeing, because I'm on the platform, is I'm seeing bigger and better clients slowly, but it's coming. And occasionally a bigger budget job will pop up, but they're actively pursuing that. They're advertising. They advertised during the Super Bowl this past year. These guys they're here. They're not going anywhere.
Right.
They're here for the long haul. And, frankly, if the more people stay away from it, the better for me personally as a voiceover talent. But as a voiceover coach, I'm saying, if you don't get on this train, you're going to, you've got to have a little bit of vision and see where this is going, because you're going to be left behind and in the dust, and you can cry and you can complain, and that's all fine if you want to, but I would rather get on the train, and benefit from that.
I guess my
follow-up, I'm done preaching now.
Is, for the people that aren't Fiverr pros, how would you suggest avoiding, I see the opportunity, but how do you avoid the people that have the gourmet appetites with fast food budget? I guess I'll use that terminology.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I've been able to watch Mallory up close as she's navigated these waters. And there's a strategy, and it would take a lot of time to get into the specifics of it. But when you first get on the platform, you really have to prove yourself to clients and to Fiverr, because they don't just open the floodgates to you just because you sign up and have a good demo. They're going to make you prove that you can deliver great customer service, which, kudos to them for that. But there are plenty of people who would love to underpay for your services. But the great thing about the platform is it's your business. You can set your rate at whatever you want, and you don't have to accept less than you want. Now, will that mean there'll be less work for you? Yes, but that's the way economics, that's the way a market works.
Right.
You put yourself out there, you put your price, people either are going to pay you or they're not. And if they're not willing to pay you what you're asking, then you have to ask yourself, am I worth what I'm asking? Maybe you are, and maybe you hold out for that, but maybe you say, well, maybe I'm not. Maybe I need to back up a little bit. Let's lower the price, get a foothold, and then graduate my prices. And what I've seen Mallory do is graduate her prices over the last couple of years, where she just bumped them up last week, as a matter of fact, and immediately got three new orders. So I think, generally speaking, people who are artists and performers, they're artists and performers, and that's great because that serves them well. But they don't see how the business and the marketing, artists tend to not understand economics, generally speaking. And unless you understand the economics of this, then it seems unfair. It seems wrong. But remember, it's your business. You can ask for what you want. You don't have to accept anything you don't want to, so don't complain. Just move on and find another customer who's willing to pay what you want.
Gotcha. Okay, fantastic. So
I sound a little enthusiastic I get a little impassioned about this. So forgive me if I get a bit too fired up, but
no, perfect. So in your, I guess going back to your overall business, and when you are approaching a client or talking to a prospect, how are you billing the value of what we do and the dollar amount behind that?
Well, first of all, the client, they could care less what you want for what you do. Mm-hmm. Value is determined by the person that's buying, not by the person that's selling. I mean, that's one of the fundamentals of economics. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean you're forced to sell at anything you don't want. You can sell whatever rate you want, but ultimately the buyer is going to make that decision. It's their money. Right. Either they believe, it's worth it or not. And oftentimes it's not even it has nothing to do with your talent or ability. It's their economics. It's like, if they have a budget for, I don't know, maybe it's e-learning, maybe it's advertising, whatever the case may be. And even the client may see your value, but their reality is they haven't been given that budget to work with. And you have every right to walk away from it because you feel that you're worth more than that. But don't get mad at the client for not seeing that, because they have a reality they have to deal with. So our job is to present ourselves and market ourselves as best we can. And that's where great demos, good websites, all of that comes in. But it doesn't mean that people will automatically be willing to fork out union rates for what you do. There are some who will, but there are a lot who just won't, because for them, it's a return on investment. You're Andrew, you're talented. I've heard your demos. You're great. But if I can't get a return on what I'm paying you, there's a bottom line element here that you have to see. What am I going to get back for what I'm paying you? And if I can't see a return on that investment, then it's not worth it to me as a business person. And I think that's a hard pill to swallow for a creator, for a performer. But that's the reality that they have to live with. And it's their money. So they get to make that decision, not me and you. Because if it was up to me,
agree.
If it was up to me, absolutely. I mean, hey, pay me. And I do get paid, but I have to market hard to find those people who are willing to pay what I want for what I do.
Right. So outside of the booth, I know you're very, very, very hardworking. So what do you personally do to recharge your batteries? What are your personal interests outside of voiceover?
Yeah, well, music.
Okay. You play?
I play guitar.
Oh, fantastic.
And I played for many, many years, a lot of different bands over the years. And so now I don't do anything live anymore, but I've got got a studio here in my, outside my booth where I work, and I've got my guitars and my recording rig, and I just goof around doing stuff. And I've got friends that I play, well, I'll get together and I'll play with. So that's just that's just for me. It's personal, and it recharges the battery. I play golf. I love golf. I like to do that. My wife and I, I've been married for a while now. I was 41, 42. Don't let my wife hear this. She'll let me have, I think it's 41 years. And we still love hanging out together, and we like to do stuff, and we run around, and, we go out for dinner, and we shop together. And that's my favorite thing to do. Saturday mornings are my favorite day of the week because Vicky and I go out for breakfast every Saturday morning, and we just talk and catch up, and, talk about our kids and our grandkids and our family and the stuff we like to do. And it's still fun for us. So those are the primary ways that I recharge my battery.
Awesome. So what are some of the biggest resources in the voiceover industry that have helped you get to where you are?
Wow. When I first started, there was not nearly as much. I mean, go back to 2005, 2006, there just wasn't that much stuff out there. There was some. I remember, and I won't mention any names, but I remember I signed up with a coach out in Los Angeles, and she was great. I loved her. She was really good. She was great from a performance standpoint, but I remember her advice was this. She said, well, get a demo and get an agent. Okay. And that's not bad advice, but I think it's partial advice. I mean, if that's your business plan, that's a tough way to build a career.
That's how it worked at that time, correct?
Well, we were transitioning at that time because we had these platforms and the technology, we were recording from home. So therefore, I mean, a fundamental shift had already happened at that time. But I don't think folks on the West Coast or the East Coast were ready to admit that was happening. But I remember her saying that. And so, I mean, I don't know, that's what I do, and which I don't regret going. I went out to Los Angeles, got my demo. That was great. I was happy with that. I got an agent, and then I got a second and third and fourth and fifth agent. And I was auditioning, and I was auditioning. And I'm like, I'm not getting work. And I'm thinking, what in the world am I missing? And then I realized, I need to keep doing what I'm doing. And, and I've had lots of agents, and I've done quite a bit of work through agents over the years, but I needed a broader net to cast. So I thought, if I was working in radio, how would I market myself? I thought I'd take it to the people. So that's what I did. I just started marketing myself directly and working on online platforms. And if it hadn't been for that, I'd have been done years ago. This would not have lasted more than a few months. But agency work accounts for less than 2% of everything I make in voiceover. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's a channel. It's one stream of income. If that's your only stream, you're playing for most of us, we're playing the lottery. If you live in Los Angeles, it might be a little different. I've got friends out there. That's what they do, and they've cultivated those relationships. But for those of us in the Midwest and don't live on the coasts, you've got to have you've got to have a few other ways to get work.
Gotcha. So if you were to write yourself a letter back to brand new, just jumping into voiceover you, from your standpoint now, what would that letter say?
Yeah. It would say, Bill, what you are about to embark on is going to be hard. It's going to be very frustrating. You're going to question your self-worth. You're going to question your talent. But if you will simply hang in for a while, hang in for several months and do what you know to do, don't listen to everybody else. Do what you know to do in marketing. That's one of the key things. Do what you know to do, and you're going to be okay. And thankfully, I hung in long enough until it caught on. I didn't give up. And frankly, it's because I really didn't, I wasn't working. I mean, that was my job. And it was either, am I going to go out and start shopping for a job now, or am I going to make this thing work? And I decided just to hang with it and make it work.
Glad you did. I've learned a lot from you.
Thanks, Andrew. Me too. Me too.
So where can prospects find you, and where can people looking for your blueprint find you?
Yeah, if you want to know more information, you can just email me directly. My email is voiceoverexperts@gmail.com, and I'd be glad to point you, in the right direction. And oftentimes I point people to a video. I like to use the medium of video to help people understand what I do. So I've created like a 50-minute video for people who are getting into voiceover to go through the basics of what I think it takes to be successful, which is kind of a lead into my training. So during that 50 minutes, you either understand and like what I do, or maybe you think I'm an idiot and you don't want, say, well, who is this guy? And that's fine too, because it at least allows you to see what I'm doing and what I'm trying to accomplish with my students.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for coming on. This was great.
Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, you're doing great work with the podcast, and it was exciting to be added to your lineup of guests. Thanks so much.
I really hope you enjoyed listening to Bill talk about his journey through VO over the years, his take on adapting to technology in your business, as well as his approach towards remaining top of mind in a conversational way to all his future prospects. If you'd like to see Bill's 50-minute free training video for those just getting started in VO, you can visit it at www.billdeweeslive.com/VO-primer. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Voiceover Coffee Shop. For more information on guests, new episodes, and more, be sure to visit www.vocoffeeshop.com.